interesting thought process.
That's a great question. Oh, that's really hard. Oh my God, I didn't realize it was going to be like this.
Wow, that's a good question.
Another good but difficult question.
Welcome to Casual Conversations with your host, Mike Oppenheim. Hi, this is Mike Oppenheim. This is episode number 2, and I have the pleasure of interviewing my brother, Sam Oppenheim. Sam is a school teacher, a public teacher in New York City, and he has been, I believe, since the early 2000s. I'm going to let him answer all this in about a minute when he comes on. But the reason I'm having this podcast and the reason I'm releasing it this week, it's the first week of June, and there was another school shooting in Texas, and it is my goal in life to keep politics as far away from every conversation as I can, but to have the serious conversations we need to have in this society. So there's a lot of people in America who are very scared and sad that there's been all these attacks, specifically in schools, since the famous Columbine attack in June of 1999, which coincidentally was the year I graduated high school. So we're 20 years past that signaling moment in American history. And so I decided to interview my brother, a public school teacher, just to ask him what it's like to be a teacher in general, and then also with these sort of things looming in maybe his mind, or maybe they're not looming. But again, for anyone listening, we're not going to talk about gun control. We're not going to talk about the typical political angles that most people get into. I want to talk to my brother and ask him questions because he's a public school teacher. So with that said, welcome to the show, my brother, Sam Oppenheim. Hi, Sam. How are you?
Hi, how's it going? Wait, we're not going to talk about the Second Amendment and gun control? I thought this was a politics podcast.
Yeah, exactly. Mike asks politics questions. No. But thank you again for coming on. It's 6 a.m. here in Arizona, and it's 9 a.m. there, and it's Memorial Day. And also, I think it would be really shitty not to say thank you to anyone who served, and just to take a moment to thank the armed forces for what they do for people across the world. And again, not to be political, but I personally want to thank anyone who'd ever put their life on the line to help me ask stupid questions on a podcast to my brother. So thank you.
Yeah, I am grateful and thankful also. Happy Memorial Day. It's a good day to look back and reflect on things.
Yeah, exactly. Real quick, what year did you actually officially become a public teacher?
2004 was my first year teaching public schools and my first year teaching.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, and at the time we're recording here, it's 2022. So you're 18 years into this career?
Yes, with a couple breaks to live in India and change my certification. I teach high school now. I used to teach elementary school.
Yes. Cool. And actually, these are all questions I was going to ask. So instead of asking you, like, how did you get into teaching and all that, I'd actually rather just start with, what do you teach?
So it's a good question. I consider myself a history teacher now, but I wear many hats, both at my school and in my teaching career, because I started off teaching elementary school. I taught special ed. I taught reading help classes. And at one point in time, I was teaching computers. Like, I had a computer lab where the kids came in, and I taught them how to type and how to use computers.
Wow. So yeah, that's a lot of hats. And I knew all this, but I kind of know, like, every year it would change and stuff. But now I do tell people you're a history teacher, so I'm glad that I'm sort of right on that. And you teach right now high school and junior high, is that correct?
Yeah, the school I'm at now is a 6 to 12, and I have the pleasure of teaching both 6th grade and 12th grade, and few in between.
And for people listening at home, when I say he teaches in New York, I don't mean he teaches in, like, upstate New York. He teaches literally in New York City. Is that correct?
Yeah, I teach in downtown Flushing, Queens, in one of the most diverse zip codes in the world, or in America.
And you also taught in other boroughs, correct?
Yeah, I taught in Brooklyn and the Bronx in my career. If you, just for anyone out there who's curious, if you become a New York City public school teacher, the city of New York employs you, and you can switch between schools in the city of New York. I mean, you know, your certification works and you can be hired at any of them.
And so I'm 40 years old. So I grew up with, like, these intense 90s films about public teachers in, like, inner cities, like Dangerous Minds and all that stuff. When you were teaching in, like, the Bronx or in Brooklyn or any of those places, were you in any of those kind of, like, stereotypical, like, tough schools?
Yeah. So, I mean, in all classrooms I've been in, there are kids who are more at risk. That's like the politically correct term to use now, which means that you're concerned they might not graduate on time. You're concerned that they're below grade level. And there've always been, in every single class I've ever taught, kids that, like, raise their hand a little too quick and are a little ahead of the curve. You know, you don't have a group of people that are all the same. But of course, you know, when you're teaching in a city school where, you know, you're trying to help kids succeed and the budgets are tight and there are classes of kids who are below grade level, it's a little bit more like the movies, but I've never been in a situation like the movies now.
Yeah. And I think I'm more asking because I do want to get, like, I think a lot of people, I didn't even say this at the beginning of the show. I've also taught. I taught for like 9 years, but I taught like community college, and I taught private language schools and stuff. So I have like I did a tiny bit of public education, but not enough to ever tell people I was a public education teacher. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that when people say like, oh, I love teachers and I support teachers, I always laugh because I'm like, there's just different types of teachers. But I think when we picture the noble teacher, we're talking about people who teach public education, people who just go and slug it out for like the typical schools most of us went to. So like, what would you tell people who either idolize or like, just say, oh, teachers are stupid and they're a dime a dozen, blah, blah, blah. Like, what do you think like is really going on with...
Hey everyone, that's it for the free version of this podcast. If you want to hear the full one, just head over to mikeyop.com and become a premium subscriber. That's MIKEYOPP.com. Thanks for listening.